I call it the worthiness quotient. And the worthiness quotient is how open you are to receiving love, nurturing, and support simply for being you, meaning no performing, no trying to get it right, no trying to win love and approval from your family or anyone else. And when I was always trying to be the best mom and denying myself, I had a low worthiness quotient. So I'd get angry. I'd take out my
Yeah.
pain on my family. I would attract things that felt hard. Maybe the kids weren't respecting me, right? But as soon as I committed to unconditional love, my vibration went up. And now all of a sudden my family's shifting. My husband and I quit fighting, and we quit fighting. Walls come down. My kids quit fighting. Everything shifted. So they were mirroring to me the love that I was holding inside of myself.
Hello, hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to another epic episode of High Vibing It. It's 2023. Happy New Year. Woo! This is our first recording of the new year, our first episode of the new year. Personally, I feel that 2023 has much lighter energy, less challenging energy. And I hear that the energy is really about stepping into your passions and living your life in radical authenticity and alignment with your values and your preferences and your boundaries and all the things we always talk about on the show. So this is the best year to go for it, to change your job, to change your relationship, change your family, whatever needs to be elevated, changed so that you can feel more passion in your life. Now is the time.
I feel
So
like
with
this
that
year
being
is
said,
like sparkly. I feel like the energy is like,
it's
that sparkle
lighter.
emoji that like where it's like the
My
three little
favorite.
stars. That's my favorite too. But it feels very much like glittery, sparkly. Like if you want it, it's yours. Just let it
Yeah.
be yours, Oh, can't wait
Passion.
to yes.
Passion is the word that keeps coming up. Like follow your passions, go for your passion. If you're not living in passion, now's the time to like make those big changes. This is going to be a super supportive year for that. So anyway, with that being said, if you're new to
Kelsey.
the show,
I'm Lindsay. Sorry, did I cut you off? Is that what you were going to say?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
I'm bringing all the 2023 energy today.
Yes, we're excited.
Just warning everyone.
We're excited. Lindsay is a hypnotherapist extraordinaire. I am a best-selling author and transformation facilitator, and we both are here living our passion of helping everyone live their best life, raise their vibration, feel good. We're all about quality of life on the show. And on that note, today we have a very special guest, Miss Terri Britt, and she is a spiritual mentor, former news anchor at Movie Time, now E! Channel, and the author of The Enlightened Mom. And we're really excited to have her on because she's just full of wisdom and good vibes. And we're going to talk about, well, you'll see what we're going to talk about. I'm not going to ruin the surprise. So, Terri, please introduce yourself to the people and let them know what you do.
I am so excited to be here because, as you said, it's your first recording of the new year. It's mine too for the new year. And I'm so on fire. I feel the same way you guys do. I feel like there's something in the air. I mean, we've been going through this dark awakening over the last couple of years, and now it's time to step into receiving, into passion. And I'm excited about it too. And I'm just thrilled to be here with you guys to be able to start off together.
Oh, yay. So exciting. So Terri,
yes.
How did you get into, tell us your story, because, okay, little spoiler, not really spoiler. Right before we started recording, she started to get into like the tale. Everybody has like their story. And I was like, stop right now because everybody's going to want to hear this. Because I feel like I don't even know that much about you, but I know that you kind of exude grace and healing. And I think that that is what a lot of people need. So without further ado, Terri, tell us how you, just tell us your story. Just go for it.
How much time do we have? Okay, I'll try to make this as short and as sweet as possible. I was raised to be a good girl. I was raised in the South, and I learned early on that it wasn't okay to receive. It wasn't okay to love yourself. I watched my parents put my sister and me first, but I also saw them be miserable at times. So I just kept working harder and harder and harder, believing that if I won everything, if I won every accolade in school, that I was going to feel loved and happy, because I saw, especially my mother, I saw that she wasn't happy. Okay. She had suppressed herself as a mom, but nothing filled me up. Nothing filled me up. And in my second semester of my sophomore year, I put my fist through my boyfriend's window because he wasn't loving me the way I wanted to be loved. And I was miserable. So I finally one day just said, I can't do this anymore. And I left school. Now, I was a person who had been valedictorian or salutatorian in my high school, on scholarship in college. And I just walked away. I said, I can't do this. Well, lo and behold, I entered Miss Arkansas USA to the Miss USA pageant, won, and 2 weeks later left for Miss USA. I mean, it was like boom, 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 boom. I made a decision that where I wasn't working.
I think
And
she's our first beauty queen. Just putting it out there. I think she's
Yeah, actually, I think so. That's fun.
Just
We
shout
haven't had
out.
any
Where's the
beauty
confetti
queens
cannon?
on the pod yet. I mean, everyone's a
here's
beauty
what's
queen in
so
their
funny,
own
you
right, but
guys,
official.
is that I didn't look like a beauty queen. I had short brown hair. In the top 12, I talked about, Bob Barker said, what do you do in Cabot, Arkansas on a Saturday night? And I had a very Southern drawl. And I said, well,
You
Bob.
met the Price is Right guy?
Yes.
I love him. Don't
Yeah.
forget to neuter and spay your animals.
Exactly.
I love him.
Exactly. Okay. Yes. And anyway, he said, what do you do in Cabot, Arkansas? And I said, well, in the winter, we stay at home. I was really Southern. But in the summer, we go down to Tasty Freeze. We sit on the back of my friend's truck. He plays the banjo, and the guys drink beer and dip a little skull. It's a real good time. And I won.
Wow. Amazing.
I mean, I totally broke the mold. And, you know, it was so interesting because I didn't have time to be trained. My first runner-up had been trained for months. I just went in there. I wasn't attached to winning Miss USA. I was wanting out of Arkansas to go to Los Angeles. I knew that I was supposed to be in LA, had never been there. But you know, when you have that calling and you feel, and I didn't even understand it back then, but I had set an intention in college going, how do I get to LA? How do I get to LA? And I didn't know anything about intentions. This was back in the 80s, right? But I had set an intention. I want to get to LA. And so I wasn't attached to winning Miss USA. I simply went in there and stood in my truth. I said, drink beer, dip skull in the back of a pickup truck, short brown hair. My dress didn't even go to the floor. Everybody had these big ball gowns on. I completely broke the mold of Miss USA. So a seed was planted at that time. It said, when you stand in your truth and follow your heart, miracles show up. But I didn't get it because I went right back on that hamster wheel afterwards, worked in television, and that didn't fill me. It was like nothing fulfilled me. Have you ever had that experience, guys?
Yeah.
Have you ever felt like you were just going after everything and nothing fulfills you? Well, I then left the television industry, got married to this amazing man. His name was Steve, and we ended up having kids. I have 2 daughters now who are older, and he had a son. But I found that as a mom, to be the best mom, I believed that I had to deny myself because that's what I'd watched my parents do.
Right.
I believed that I really believed I didn't matter. It was that everyone else mattered, but not me.
Right. My purpose now is everybody else.
Exactly, which is what we've been programmed to do, right?
Yeah.
Especially as mothers.
Yeah.
So, and it's so funny because Kelsey, what you may find, I know you're engaged, but when you do decide to have kids, what I've seen with women who are so empowered, because I've been coaching for over 20 years, that they'll say, oh, I'm not going to do what my mother did. But as soon as they become a mom, they start sliding right back in because that's what they witnessed, right? They took on a belief that this is what love is. But I can tell you, when I would get angry and pissed off and yelling at my kids, I didn't feel very loving. So it was interesting. My dad died in 95, and I realized that he'd lost everything in bankruptcy and became an alcoholic. And I realized that he couldn't receive love. He didn't have any forgiveness of himself. And that's when I realized, oh, I'm just like my dad. I don't have any forgiveness of myself. And I said, that's it. I'm done. Well, you know what? When you make a decision that you're done, just like I'd done in college, and you say, I'm ready for something different, everything opened up. I meet this girl who is going to a healing school, and my therapist had said, you need to get into meditation. You're wound so tight. Well, I meet this girl right after that, and she goes, oh, well, come with me. Well, it was at a psychic school. And
nice.
First night in class, you guys, first night in class, we're learning about grounding. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I see this spirit go across the room. I had never seen anything. And
how old were you when this happened?
I'm 61 now. So I was 33.
Okay.
Okay. So I think that's right. Yeah. So I watched this spirit go across the room, and I'm like, I'm shocked. my teacher said, "You look like you've just seen a ghost." I said, "I think I did." Because I'd never experienced anything like that. So I'm not convinced. And I said, "It feels like a man," because it was more like a silhouette, but I could tell he had a beard. And I said, "He has a beard." And right as I said that, he comes up right next to her and she goes, "Oh yeah, he's the founder of the school. He always hangs out here." And I'm like,
Wow.
whoa. I was like, holy crap. I mean, I just.
Was this in Los Angeles?
Yes.
Where was that? What is this place? I want to go there.
That was the Southern California Psychic Institute.
I love it.
And
Makes sense.
it's so cool. So then, of course, you see something like that and you're hooked, right? Well, I'm also
Right.
meditating and running energy daily, grounding daily. And all of a sudden I'm finding I'm calmer, I'm more peaceful, I'm more joyful. There's something to this. I need to stick with it. So I'm finally starting to really honor myself. Well, from there, I went into the healing classes. And my girlfriend and I decided this school at that time, I don't know what it's like now, and I don't want to bash anybody, but it just didn't feel as, the teacher didn't feel as loving as we wanted. So we both set an intention that we'd have a teacher who was loving. Well, we ended up at a school in Santa Monica called Clearsight. The teacher, Judy, to this day is like an earth angel. Amazing. So we spent 13 months training in their being able to read energy, clearing energy, stuff like that. And I found my calling. I mean, people would say to me, "Gosh, you just really get relationships." I'm like, "Really? I do?" And because you don't realize what your gifts are half the time, right? So I just kept following it and following it. And then after that was done, I did some more studying with the astrophysicist who was also a spiritual teacher. It was just, how you do. You just keep going and keep going. Well, then one day I'm meditating. I'd read a book by Paul Ferrini called Love Without Conditions. I don't know if you've ever read that book. It's beautiful.
Gonna read it now.
The Reflections of the Christ Mind, I think, is the tagline. And I read this book. I was just really moved. I sit down, or actually I'm laying on my floor in my bedroom meditating by the fireplace when all of a sudden little Terri, the little girl inside of me, shows up and I am sobbing. I'm just because I realized I'd never acknowledged her. I've always worried about everyone else. And then I hear in my ear very clearly, "Get up and write this. This is the beginning of your first book, or this is the beginning of your book." And so I got up and I wrote the first paragraph. "Today I said hello to a little girl. She is sweet and kind," or whatever, and that was the beginning of me starting to use the energy tools that I had learned in my home. So what I started doing, because in our energy school, the teacher would say, "You and y'all have matching pictures. Go read each other." Okay, that's all she'd tell you. So you'd be sitting there and you're clearing out their person's energy, and all of a sudden you're going, "Whoa, I can't see anymore." At least this is how I got triggered. So that was my cue to stop, go within, and look for whatever was matching with the person I was reading, clear the energy, and then come back to center. And now, now I can read the energy. Okay. Well, when little Terri showed up, I was shown every time you react to your kids, every time you react to your husband, to anything in general, see it as the same experience that you had in class, that I'd stop, give thanks, and then go within and talk to little Terri and say, "What's hurting? What's causing you to suffer?" And then, of course, if it's a belief that's causing you to suffer, it's not the truth. So I would do the clearing, and then I would do a soul retrieval. What is my truth? And I'd call back my soul. Well, with every step of that, not only did I shift and I was finding my gifts and, and speaking more and doing more work, but my family completely shifted. Everybody completely shifted. It was so cool because no longer was I needing my family to fill me up. No longer was I performing. And one of the other things that I did is that when I performed, I expected my kids to perform. I expected my husband to perform. So I was projecting my lack onto them. Well, I quit. I quit doing it. So my kids quit fighting. The walls between Steve and me went down. I mean, everything shifted. And then what was so cool is Steve was a big garment manufacturer, had a big company, made clothes for Dillard's and Macy's and all these different people. Well, he decided to leave. And I go to the library one day and I pick out this old VHS tape. Okay. And I pull it out and I said, "This isn't for me. This is," or I got it. And I said, "I got to take this home." It was on Deepak Chopra. And it was talking about the way of the wizard. So I start watching it at home. I go, "Oh, this isn't for me. This is for Steve." He comes in, he watches it. He's sobbing, this big 250-pound gorilla, and he's sitting there sobbing. And he said, I don't want to be an achiever anymore. I want to be a seeker. I want to let everything go. Okay. We let everything go. Our house sold without ever going on the market at top dollar. I mean, it was just boom, 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 boom. And next thing I know, we are renting a home because I said, I can't leave, because I had TV people talking to me about doing a spiritual TV show. I was like, I can't leave yet. And the show, they never ended up doing it. But he took a year and a half off. Well, you know who Neil Donald Walsh is, right? Who wrote Conversations with God?
Great.
His daughter shows up to my husband, her and her partner, and said, we have an idea for a company and you're the man to create it. Because all he had said to me was, I want to do something bigger than myself. I want to do something for the planet and God. Year and a half later, they show up and they had this idea for a company called Conscious One. And you guys probably don't remember it. Do you remember Conscious One? It was back in the early 90s. It died when Steve died. But it was one of the first companies to bring out self-help courses. Like now everybody's got self-help courses.
And making them.
And making them, right. We had all the Hay House authors. We had everybody on there. And so it was so cool to see that my shifting and choosing to love myself not only changed my life, but it got Steve on his path. And what was so beautiful about it, he ended up dying at the age of 56. He had a very advanced prostate cancer, had a 2% chance of beating it, beat the cancer, and then died of a heart attack. But what was so interesting about it is he told me, he says, I feel better in my skin than I've ever felt. And because he said, you forced me to it. When you quit caretaking me to find yourself, it forced me to find myself. And now I feel better than I've ever felt.
When you quit caretaking me, let's just pause on that part for a second, ladies. It's so easy to like throw your husband in there with your kids and just like feed them and clothe them and teach them and try and guide them. But is that the dynamic you want to be stuck in forever? It's an easy way to suck the romance out of the relationship and rob people of their own like growth.
Well, yeah. And here's what I'm like, I can't get past this point until I talk about it and actually give it the moment that it needs to have. When you were talking about how he basically had a moment where he was like, my life needs to change. And I am going to voice the need for my life to change. And I want to cry because so many people in this world never get to do that. Feel like they can't, doesn't occur to them. It's just not in their reality. The fact that the door was open for him to be like, I'm recognizing this is not my purpose. I would like to go in the direction of my purpose, and to have that support needed, because that's just step one, right? You also need the support to be able to take that step. I just think it's so beautiful that he was able to make that decision and recognize that that was what needed to happen.
Yeah.
And B, that he had the support system necessary to let that actually happen. And how beautiful everything just turned out because he made the decision. Do you understand? Do you understand, people? How incredible that is? And also how, of course, that's what happened, because that's what happens when you do that. But it's just, it never stops being absolutely incredible when that does happen. So thank you for telling that story. I know you're not done yet. I just had to stop right there because...
Can I add something to what you're saying?
Absolutely.
So what I see is, and you guys I'm sure see it too, as the professionals that you are in working with people, is that when you're in that family paradigm, there's a tendency to stay in the old way of being because that's what we know and that's what felt safe. But it really isn't safe, because if we can't be who we are and we can't follow our passions and voice our needs, then it's not very safe at all. And what happened for Steve and me, where we used to blame each other when I shifted and then he started shifting, we became an enlightened family. That's my company's actual name, Enlightened Family Institute. We became an enlightened family because we made a decision that no longer were we going to point fingers. We were going to say, thank you for the gift. I'm triggered right now, but this is what I'm learning. And then I'm going to come back and share with you. And we'd be sounding boards for each other. So he felt supported because he felt safe in our relationship.
Yes.
And I think that so many people stay in an old way of being because they do believe that's safety, but it is not.
Yeah.
You know, safety is when we get into a high vibration and then we attract beautiful, loving things to our lives. It's when we stay in that low vibration, what I call a low worthiness quotient, is that, you know, I'm gonna deny myself because I think this is the only way I can have your love. Right? So then it feels unloving.
Well,
So,
and it's like the lie of the comfort zone, right? Like, get out of your comfort zone. But how comfortable are you really in your comfort zone? You're not comfortable. You're unsatisfied. You're living small. You're thinking small. You're dealing with blame and shame and guilt and all these things, and just living in a smaller box than you deserve. You're not comfortable. So why not be uncomfortable in the direction of what you want? You know what I mean?
And that's brilliant. I mean, that is brilliant what you're saying. Be uncomfortable in the direction that you want, because I know for me, I mean, oh, it would feel so scary, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I have this big voice and want to say stuff. And you guys, I mean, I did that with Steve, and then he died, and my husband Charlie actually showed up on my doorstep the next day. And I knew him from a distance. And it was so funny because Kelsey, you were talking about passion earlier. I had been working on passion in holding the vibration of passion in my life right before Steve died. I painted my bedroom like this burnt orange, you know, like that kind of terracotta look. And
this is actually burnt orange, to be honest. It's not showing up. Yeah, it's the same
almost
color.
red here.
It does. Yeah, it's a little brighter on camera. But guys, I'm sorry if you're listening to this. You should go on the Patreon and patreon.com/high vibe, and you can actually see what we're doing. Anyway, yes, terracotta color. I'm with you.
So anyway, I'm working on passion. I'm looking at where am I blocking passion in my life. I'm a Scorpio. I like sex. Okay. I want more passion. And it wasn't just about that. It was just passion, right? So I'm working on it. Last 6 weeks of my husband's life, we're taking a dance class. Our teacher's like, are you guys you're like your honeymooners? And no, we've been married almost 17 years. It was the passion was starting to exude. Well, lo and behold, he drops dead of a heart attack. I mean, instantly. I'm going, what in the heck is going on? You know how that feeling is when you feel like things are starting to happen, and then all of a sudden it feels like
the floor drops out underneath you.
That's what it felt like. I was like, what is going on? Well, the next day, Charlie, my husband now, shows up on my doorstep, and his daughter was on my girls' dance team. I didn't know him. You kind of hang out with your kids' friends' parents. Well,
right.
His daughter, you know that, right? So
yeah,
you do that.
yeah. That's how all my parents made their friends, because I grew up as a dancer. So all the dance,
and that's the
parents.
only way I make friends now, except for Kelsey and podcast people.
It's so right on.
Yeah,
so he comes in and he goes, "Let me support you through this." His wife had killed herself 5 years prior. So he said, "Let me support you and help you through this." And I said, "Okay." And I had always seen Charlie as kind of quiet. I was like, "Okay, Charlie, thank you." He comes in. 2 weeks later, he rolls up on his Harley. Show his t-shirts rolled up.
I'm getting Aaron Brockovich vibes of like the bad boy who's like super sweet and gentle.
Yes, exactly. He was the wild boy, and he's crazy. I mean, boy, his friends, because he had a 17-year marriage to Kim, and he was trying to do everything just right because he had his other wife prior to her leave him. And he just said, well, I'm going to do it differently. Well, when he and I got together, all of his old friends were telling me, Charlie's back, because he's been missing for 17 years. So he's crazy. He's absolutely crazy. And we just laugh our butts off constantly. We have so much passion in our lives. And I don't know, it was like, wow, who would have thought? And so the night that Steve died, they were doing a homicide investigation because it was at our house and no one was there. So they had to make sure there was no foul play. We were coming back from a dance competition, my daughter and I, and my other daughter was at a friend. So we ended up at our neighbor's. I'm sitting on the toilet going, Steve, why? And I feel his presence come in. I said, why now? Why are you leaving now? And he said, I finally let go of the controls, because he had had the prostate cancer and he had been holding on, and he beat that, but he was just holding on for dear life. And when he said, I finally let go of the controls, I was at peace.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I was at complete peace. And 3 months later, Charlie and I started dating. And a year later after that, we got married.
Now, when you say you were at peace, I know if I'm like, I feel like I'm pretty good at getting a sense of what people are feeling and what I would feel in that situation. And for me, if I heard that, I would feel peace from the fact that, like, A, there's nothing I could have done to prevent it. B, it was completely in his hands and this is his journey. Like that for me, I would never deny someone of their journey. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I would never try to do that. And is that kind of what you're like, that's where the peace came from? Okay. Yeah. And absolutely agree. That would be it. Like what else could do that besides knowing that it was theirs. It was theirs to have, their experience to have, and they chose to have it. Like what else do you want? Right?
No, and that is, you're so right on. That is exactly. And I know we were talking about, it'd be so hard to lose a child, but at the same time, this their journey too. It would be
exactly
horrible, but we have to do that. I used to do this thing when my kids were young because I get so worried about, oh, they're gonna be okay.
Oh my God, you're me.
I literally, well, here's a visual for you.
Help me.
I would visualize walking up this golden spiral staircase, holding each one, and I would just hand them over to God and the universe and say, I surrender my child.
Because we're just borrowing them.
Yes. And they're our greatest
in the
teachers.
end.
Don't you learn from your kids?
Yeah.
Don't you? I watch my kids and I would just, because I never really knew how to play until I became a mother. And because I had my angry side, but I also had my side that came out that, oh man, I'm going to be here present with you and play.
Let your inner child out. Play with your kids. Yes.
But they taught me so much and they still teach me. And now what's so funny is you could be dealing with something and they coach me. And I love it. You've got these wise women that are also helping their partners to stand in their truths and follow their passions. It is so freaking cool to see your children grow up and be empowered, dynamic, connected women. It is like, yes.
Well, I have all boys. However, that doesn't change a dang thing, and they're still going to be empowered as well. And my middle one, a lot of you know that are listening, Kelsey knows, he's like he's the spiritual one. He's a Pisces. He says, well, I'm a Pisces. I like the water. He was, but I got him a tarot deck for Christmas. Oh, well, Santa did. Yes. And I was like, read my cards for me. And I kind of taught him how, feel the cards. What is it? What do you think it's a kid's tarot? Just to be clear, I didn't get him any of this, like, your 10 of swords nonsense. No, there is no death card. It's the change card. There is no hanged man. It's like the patience card. Cool. Yeah. So he's like feeling the cards and he's like, I think this one. And it's just that it's so awesome to know that, like, I'm having a teeny tiny little hand in making them know that there is more. There is more than this. And you, my dear children, are so powerful. Even when they have like a negative, I knew I was going to not do it and I didn't do it. And I said, you know what? Look how powerful you are. Imagine if you said you could, what would happen? And just that little, I'm not good all the time, but in my good moments, just those moments of like, oh, maybe I am powerful. Maybe I do get to decide. Maybe I am able to make that choice. There's just nothing like it. Because what, Terri, Kelsey, even, what if we had that as kids? Like, what if we had that? All the stuff they're teaching breath work in their classes now. What if we had that? That's amazing. We weren't meant to, or we would have, but I'm just saying, like, it's just incredible what these kids are, the gifts that these kids are getting, even just outside of the home.
Well, let me add something to that. My dad, so I had two voices in my head. My mom, who had PTSD her whole life from being abused. My dad was also abused, but he ended up taking Dale Carnegie classes and Earl Nightingale and all those forerunners, right, to self-help. So
Love that.
Dad would say to me, you can be anything you want to be, which I loved. And he was my greatest cheerleader. But here is the other thing he used to say, do as I say, not as I do.
Yes.
It
That
was a
sounds a
choice.
lot like my dad. My dad was like, who cares? Throw out the rule book. Also, because I said so.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. It's like, oh, but you know, it was so interesting. I had this really beautiful experience. I was meditating. This was back in the probably 90s. Um, Daddy had died in 95, and he was what his life was what got me on my spiritual journey. So I was meditating a lot, and my girlfriend said, your dad is really wanting to talk to you. And I said, oh, I keep seeing him, but I didn't think about carrying a conversation with him. This was early in my journey. So I'm like, oh, I didn't think about it. So I sit down one day to talk to him, and I'd been hearing Wilderness Park, which is this park right down in Redondo Beach in Los Angeles. It's a Girl Scout park. So it feels like you're in the middle of the wilderness in the city. And I'd been hearing it and hearing it. So I heard it again when I sat down. I thought, okay, I'm going. I get in the car. I drive down to Wilderness Park. I sit down by this little stream. There's some bunnies I see off in the distance, and I call Daddy's spirit in. And I always believed that I had to be perfect for Dad because that's the scenario my mother created for herself and for us, right? So I asked him, I said, Dad, why did you need me to be so perfect? And I do a lot of automatic writing with the other hand, and he started writing through me and pretty much said, I never needed you to be perfect. You inspired me to try to be more of me. And that was such a shift in consciousness for me because Dad was God in our home. He was God. I mean, he was God. He had the last say on everything. And so it was all about trying to please Daddy. And that was the example Mama set. So in that moment of recognizing, oh my gosh, I've been living a lie my whole life, trying to please my dad, when in reality, he was learning from me, like we do with our children. And what you're going to do at one point, at some time, I guess, Kelsey, are you going to have kids?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
She's already seen her kid.
I already know their names. I already know them. I talk to them like all the time. Yeah.
How many?
2, maybe more. I think if I had more, I would maybe want to like adopt a couple of kids. So we had like a fun mixed big bunch of people. But
Awesome.
but yeah, Maya and Jay. Well, I call him Jay, but he's probably gonna be named after his dad, Terri Britt Shoegarts.
Oh, I love that.
The third.
At one
my
point,
fiance is a junior, and then his dad's like the OG.
in like 93, 94, I was 8 years old, and I was convinced I was going to have a daughter, and her name was going to be Mariah because of Mariah Carey. Never. I loved Mariah. Big hair, big curly hair. Mariah is like, that is it. And Whitney, can't forget Whitney. But yeah, I was convinced, but then I never had a girl. And if listen, this is a whole thing, Terri, because I really would. I would. My husband is like, no, we want to, because here's the thing. I agree. We want to travel. We're finally getting to the point where we don't have to worry about naps and diapers, and he's 4. So like that's long gone. And we don't have to worry about the baby, because for 10 years, I've at one point or another had to worry about the baby. And now there's no baby. There is a toddler who still runs up and gives me a hug every time he sees me. And I'm just like so scared for that to be over. I would have more kids. My husband says no. I agree with him. And also at the same time, I know I would never regret having more kids, but I just don't want to regret not having more. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I don't know. Where it's still, it's
TBD.
Still TBD. TBD. Indeed. To be determined to have a daughter. And that's the thing. Like, part of me just like, I love having boys. I really do. But I've always like, what would I be like as a girl mom? I don't know. It'd be kind of cool to teach her like what you talk about. Like, I want to teach her stuff I didn't know. I want to make sure she knows that I want to be the person I needed as a kid, but I am already doing that. Yeah, you know what I mean?
But look at the need for men.
Exactly.
Who are awakened and it's okay for you to feel. It's okay for you to express your feelings. I mean, the suicide rate among men is horrible, right? And so they need it so
Yes.
badly. So how blessed they are to have you as a mama, and that they get to watch you shine, and they know that it's okay that they thrive.
I do think about that too.
Yeah, yeah. I call my hubby my Renaissance man. And let me tell you what he said to me a couple of years ago. He said, I always knew you loved him. Well, let me preface this a little bit. He was pulling his cards. Okay. So I've gotten him into pulling cards.
Love it.
And this is a man who used to be a youth minister and a deacon in a Baptist church. So yeah. And
that is a hard pull. So you did good.
Yeah. And so anyway, he was pulling his cards and he kept pulling soulmate, and it was bothering him because his idea was, you're my soulmate. Why am I pulling this card? So he spent time with it. And he finally came to me one day. I was sitting downstairs. He comes down. He had been up in his office. His chin is quivering. His tears are running down his face. And he said, I get it. I know now why I've been pulling this card. And I said, why? He said, I always knew you loved me. He said, but until you taught me to love myself, I couldn't receive your love. And now I do. So the card was asking him to see that the intimacy that had been created between us, as he felt he loved himself enough that he could open up and get fully vulnerable and really connect, because I think this is what people miss, is that if we don't love ourselves, we're not going to be fully intimate with our partners. We're not going to let them see
you can't.
You can't, because you're ashamed. You're holding guilt, shame, and so, and he had a lot of stuff around his wife killing herself. So
naturally, of course, yeah.
Right, and it affected how he parented his daughter. He was over parenting, doing everything for her, not letting her take responsibility for anything. Now we see some of the repercussions of that at times. But she's growing too. She's on a spiritual journey as well. So it's been so interesting to see, how as a woman, the power we have in shifting not only ourselves, but our families, because we women, we are the nurturers. And you think about it, it's like if women don't receive in their lives and in their homes, they are sending a message to their loved ones that it is not okay to receive.
Hey there, we hope you're enjoying this episode so far, but if you want to listen to the whole thing, we're going to invite you over to our podcast. Either search for High Vibing It on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you guys listen to podcasts, or even better, if you want to watch the extended video version of this episode that's even longer than the actual podcast itself, head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/highvibe. Lindsay, tell them what's awesome about the Patreon.
Patreon is where we have all of our extended episodes. As Kelsey said, we have it on video, so you can actually see the things that we're talking about. Sometimes we have visual aids, and it's nice to know what we're talking about. We also have hangouts that we do sometimes that are exclusive to Patreon people. And you can get started with all of this and bonus content and everything that we have only for the Patreon people for as little as $3. I think it's $3.33 a month. And that's it. And you guys can get all the benefits and all access to everything that we put in there. Really cool.
It's really cool, really fun, super easy to join. And you guys don't even have to do that to finish this episode. If you're like, screw it, I don't want to pay any money, I just want to hear the rest of this episode, go to our podcast, High Vibing It, search for it wherever you listen. It's totally free. Either way, enjoy the rest of the show wherever you choose to enjoy it. And we will see you guys next week because we do a new one every week. Adios.
Bye.